Thanks for joining us for today's webinar. What we're going to be talking about today is the life cycles of our IT systems. And, I've been here for about, I think it's 11 months now, and I've already seen a number of changes. Those that have been here longer have probably seen a few more, but it does seem like we are doing a lot more, we're seeing a lot more of the pieces of a life cycle. So we thought it would be pretty important to talk about it. So you'll see how random I can get in one of these, because the first thing I thought of when we were talking about life cycles was Polaroid cameras. Maybe I can show you why here in a bit. But before we do, I do need to remind everybody that we are also going to be talking about operational excellence just for a second at the very end. I'm hoping to wrap this up before 9, but do need to stay tuned for that one. So when we talk about life cycles of tech systems, the first thing, again, that comes to mind is change, because nothing seems to be holding still. And so, you think the first thing is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And we firmly believe that in our world of the odd bit and the DTS teams. We don't want to change just because we can. Okay, that's not true. We don't usually follow through and do the change that we could do or might want to do because we think it's cool. Because we just don't have the time or resources to do everything we'd like to do. So we just don't do it for change's sake. But then again, there are some things when you think of change that absolutely should change. And thirdly, though, change is so much easier to accept if you understand the rationale behind it, right? So if somebody just pushes a change to you, that can be kind of difficult to understand. Some people might look at, why did we go from GroupWise to Gmail? And again, Gmail is new and it doesn't do this and doesn't do that, and GroupWise was great. Why did we do that? There's a lot of study into decisions like that, a lot of investment, but maybe not a lot of communication on why the change is there. So that's something that maybe our team can help with. But when you get back to thinking about change, this picture, it came right to mind. I don't know, there's probably those that are watching this that are going, oh, I remember those, and they had like these warm memories or something. I hated this thing. This thing, you look at that and you say, it worked perfect. Why'd we ever change that or go away from that? I remember being a little kid, and I think it was my first experience into profanity, because I got my little fingers stuck in that little round thing when I was playing with it. Oh, and I think I was at my grandma's house too. Anyway, sorry, tangent. So another thing when you think about change is the Polaroid camera. It's kind of awesome, but kind of not when you can put about 10,000 pictures on your phone that are higher quality, and you can edit yourself out of them and stuff. Anyway, and then when you think about change, there's also, for me at least, that song, that terrible hippie song, the one about seasons and turning, and I don't know. So I Googled that because I wanted to get a picture of that in here, and oh, this is real. I'm sorry, this is a little bit of a squirrel moment for me, but that's the first thing that comes up when I can't get past it. So you think about things that need to change. So you got 4 people sitting in a bathtub, and the one guy that wasn't high when they made the decision to sit in a bathtub is looking at the camera, and he's just saying, someday my kids are going to look at this picture and wonder why I'm wearing a cardigan and sitting in a bathtub next to a prison toilet. Doesn't even have... Anyway, some things need to change. Incidentally, if you can get past this first album cover, which I can't, they did change that. But what they did is they put a little box over the toilet that said, here's the songs inside this album. So, they at least fixed that part. I'll keep moving. So when we talk about our IT systems in DHRM, it causes a great deal of stress and stuff. But you got to remember that things have to change in DHRM because sometimes we don't get it right the first time. There's just corrections that need to be made. Sometimes the tool doesn't do everything you need it to do. Things like the ACA might come up and you need a certain type of data that it just didn't produce easily before, and now you've got to capture it. And then there's just like external drivers as well. Like, hackers learn how to do new stuff every day. And so you keep putting these Band-Aids on your system to block the hackers out, for example. Those are some of the things that would drive change. So this is out of the the newspaper, so to speak, the other day. It was talking about Windows XP. I don't know if you've ever used, if you've used all of the, if the people listening have ever used all of the Windows tools, but the Windows XP was actually the one that I personally liked, and it was super stable, fast, clean, you could understand. Well, Windows, Microsoft themselves are announcing that Windows XP will die, and they're not doing it just to, not exclusively to sell more software, I'm sure. But if you read through the article, they talk about you can only fix things for so long before it just doesn't work anymore. And so I found this image, that's kind of Windows XP. There comes a point where just the duct tape isn't going to do it anymore. You just got more duct tape than car at this point. And you just need to replace it, and that's why newer versions came up. And fortunately, some were better than others, but they do seem to improve over time. One more thing that comes to mind when we talk about IT systems and change is Google. I'm really hoping this link will work. But if you just go to this window, I hope it's broadcasting, this looks like a very simple web page, right? It looks like it's a very simple web page. But if you come in and you view the page's source, in other words, this is the code that's underneath what you see. This is the stuff the computer reads. That's what Google really is. And if you look over here, I don't know if you can see it in the webinar, but the little lines of code, it goes to, I can't even remember, a lot of code. This is just your Google search engine. It goes down to 234 lines. This is updated every 6 hours is what Google has said that their latest is. They update that very simple, one search bar page every 6 hours because people all around the world are trying to hack it, and they're trying to, it just requires maintenance. And so fortunately, we're almost as popular as the Google search engine, but not quite. So fortunately, we don't have to update, HRE every 6 hours. It's close, but anyway. Just in the last year, here's some of the changes that we've had to implement. You have HRE, which has a new case management function in it. Business objects, they came out with a new and improved, it's much more graphic oriented, and has just a lot of capability. We've implemented that in the last little bit. Like we've talked about earlier, group-wise, we went to Gmail as a totally different system for how we're throwing email at each other. And then the Enwisen version of the Employee Gateway will soon go to kind of more of an in-house version of the gateway. That's a new system. And again, there's different rationale for each one of these, but they're all, we think, valid. They've been studied out, and that's why they're getting implemented. The new state jobs will be a pretty exciting change we'll see in January. But with the example of Windows XP, it was good. Again, why not just keep fixing it? This is not the way that systems are. It's not a road that leads off into the sunset. It's not a linear life cycle, I guess is what we're trying to say. And this is kind of the meat of what we need to talk about. So stay awake, wake up. The SDLC, this is kind of a cool. It's how you look at something like HRE or the Employee Gateway or whatever, one of those systems. The first phase is obviously you're gathering requirements, and sometimes requirements change. And think about that with the systems you use most, HRE or whatever. Your requirements can change based on the type of work you're doing, or again, what we talked about, like the external environment. I know there were some security issues with GroupWise. There was the vendor had problems, Novell. The cost of maintaining that versus replacing it was pretty dramatic. So again, your requirements can change a lot. And then what we do is we do an analysis of that. We get those requirements, but then we also look at those environmental factors that are out there. What's the typical use of this thing, and where are things going? And then we get to the fun part, which is the design work. You say, well, if it worked perfectly without thinking of what's under the hood, we just want, like Google, we want one box, a lot of white space, occasionally a little game, and our logo. And then, you talk about the architecture underneath, which is you want to harvest every living thing this person does and push ads to them. So that's the design phase. The development phase is where you take the design and you hand it off to the people that actually know what that source code means, and they start doing it. There's a huge phase that most people misunderstand, and that's the testing, the quality phase. I think that's where we're at with NeoGov's State Jobs 2. We're fixing little bugs, we're tweaking things, we're learning how to get comfortable with it, training the trainers kind of thing. And then there comes the day when it deploys, and so that's the the big announcement day, and then we say this is the new system, this is what we're using. Then not to be, it's funny that our graphic actually has the smallest parts. They're actually probably the most significant. Is you go into the enhancement and maintenance phase, and that's where you've used it for 3 months and you say, oh man, I really wish it would have done this, and yeah, I know I forgot to tell you in the requirements phase. And so then you go through, kind of do the same loop, and you get back and you say, yeah, let's maintain this, let's tweak this a little bit. Now, the analogy of your car kind of falls apart at this point, because your car's not software. Your car, you don't, well, unless you're Lyle or something, you don't lift up the hood and tweak it every weekend. You don't constantly work on it and try to make it better. A lot of times with software, you're trying to keep it from dying or keep it from going obsolete. And again, like I say, the way you do that is you go in a loop. You keep repeating this. So more specific to us in our world, with this change that we've talked about in the HR to HR newsletter, was DTS is going to kind of share their responsibility with us. We think there might be a cost savings here. We're just testing this one. We're going to see how well DHRM can do the stuff on the top half. So your odd bit folks will go out and help you. Well, of course, we're going to have DTS holding our hand and making sure we do this right, but getting the requirements from the end user, saying, our gateway's got a lot of links. It's really hard to find stuff. Help us. We want it to be easily searchable or whatever. And we want it to be really visually oriented. Okay, so, and then we'll do an analysis and we'll say, well, from what we understand, we think the build it option is going to be around this much, and the buy it option is this much, and so forth. And then maybe we even get so far as we start wireframing it out, and we just say, well, if it looked like this and did that, click here. We want this part to look like this. But we have to get it to a point where it becomes like a recipe, where DHRM can go over to DTS and say, okay, we've studied it out. Here's what we think we need. Hand it over to them, and when they accept it, then it just becomes their, I guess I'll stick with recipe or script or whatever, for them to go off of and actually create the thing that we were describing. They would do the bottom half, but then it would come back to us as the business users to continue to check it and make sure it's still meeting the requirements and so forth. Anyway, didn't have a real clever title for this, so this is just maintenance stuff. This is stuff most people don't know. I did find one infographic here that IBM put out, and they talk about 70%, on average, 70% of all IT expenses are spent on operations and maintenance. And I thought, what? You got to be kidding. So Kay gave me some information as well, and it's just about the same kind of thing, that maintenance typically consumes, the bulk of all the costs that have to do with your software. So if that's true, then the most important of those life cycle phases is the maintenance phase, maintenance and enhancements. The fact that we do have to go in and change HRE every 6 months, that has to happen. That it should happen, and it happens all over the place. And it's not because people are slow on the original scoping. It just, that's what happens. Things change. The second fact that was interesting is enhancements are responsible for, that the enhancements, I've been using those interchangeably, but anyway, that they're 60% of your software maintenance costs. So when if you're in the field and you're using, I keep using HRE as my example, but you're using HRE and you say, oh, can we just make it do this? Can't you just? Sorry, that's funny to an IT nerd. Yeah, you probably can, but it's usually really expensive and a lot more complicated than even the IT side thinks in the first place. But what you do over time is you evolve the capacity and the capability of that system so it can actually do more than it was originally designed to do. Sometimes when you go to fix something, you realize this other part's broken too, and so you end up, solving a problem before you knew it was a problem. But you can see why when you get into the code, it can take a while, and it might not turn out exactly the way you wanted it. It just takes a lot of resources to do that. But there's errors, and I know there's no errors here, but they do say 17% of all the costs. So if you were to look at our department, our DTS costs with our systems, 17% is because of mistakes we made and we need somebody to go in and fix. But if that's true, that's kind of the punchline of this slide, though, is just, if that's true, and it is, maintenance is therefore a solution, not a problem. We should be glad when there's a new version of whatever coming out. It should mean that it's better and faster and does what it needs to do. When we get to the analysis phase, these are the questions that we would ask, say if it's Audit doing the scoping on some project or potential project. We would say, first question, do you even need this anymore? I gotta quit using HRE when I ask that question, but is there really a business case still for this tool? GroupWise had some really cool stuff, but and those requirements didn't change. It was the stuff around it that changed, and so that kind of comes to the performance and ongoing maintenance likelihood and so forth. That's another consideration. We do look at throw it out versus buy it. Sometimes it's cheaper to do things in-house. Sometimes it's just cheaper to go and buy something off the shelf. You don't see a lot of organizations creating their own Microsoft Word or Excel. But we found, with the Employee Gateway that we can probably do it faster and easier and cheaper if we just do it ourselves. So that decision was made a while ago, but that decision was made to just use DTS. And then it's just, is there an alternative out there? We've looked at some project proposals that come in and we just say, that's an interesting vision, but is there a totally different way to solve the same problem? So if you're on the business side and you're asking, say, Oddbit to come over and help you scope something out, be prepared for a lot of, I call them 5-year-old questions, like, why do you need that? Well, why? But why? We'll ask you that about 5 times. And if you don't punch us, then maybe we can get down to that core business need, and then we can look at, shop around for other solutions other than, I saw this at a conference, or, wow, this info commercial was great last night. I need this for my team. Okay, so in summary, I told you I'd be done before 9. So in summary, we don't believe in changing for change's sake, though some stuff does need to change. And I think that unless most employees at DHRM want to spend a lot of time hanging out with our group, we should probably be a little more flexible in embracing the changes in our IT systems, and just trust that there's been a lot of thought that goes into these kind of investments. They're not cheap. They have huge consequences. When you implement something, you've got to implement the maintenance burden as well. That is all taken into consideration. So anyway, that's all I've got for tech system life cycles. I don't know how to turn on the questions thing, so I'm not going to ask for questions. No, but I do need to, before I get into that, I do need to give the one more summary slide on operational excellence. Thank you for staying tuned, those that are. Recruitment was the first thing that we modeled, and we've talked about this, and it has been going not quickly. now we're going quickly. We wanted to time our recruitment implementation with the implementation of the State Jobs 2, which is end of January. And so our modeling is done, but what we need everybody in DHRM to know is the way you measure the effectiveness or our our excellence in recruitment. The way we're going to measure that, it requires a quality metric. And the only way we're going to get that is from our customer, who's the hiring manager. And so we've done in the past a survey that's gone out. I think it goes out monthly, and it just says, hey, hiring manager, if you hired somebody, click here and tell us how great we did. We get a really terrible response rate on those. And we put a quarterly report out on that might not be worth as much as it could be otherwise. What we are doing now is we need to establish a baseline with new questions. These are questions that the governor's office is a little more excited about. It's ones we like. We think it really will reflect better the stuff that we control. We don't control how long the hiring manager holds on to that list we gave them or whatever. We're talking about how long it takes us to screen the applications that actually come in, and we ask the hiring manager in that same questionnaire, did this list of people match the position description that you approved? In other words, we're trying to teach hiring managers throughout the state that it's wise for them to sit down with HR staff to get a really good position description if they want to have a good pool of candidates to interview from. Anyway, we are putting out a survey today because we're kind of behind the 8 ball. So the survey goes out today to all hiring managers. You might be getting questions from them saying, what is this survey? Do I have to take it? We're trying to target this survey to hiring managers that actually conducted a recruitment in November. So it's not every hiring manager yet. But we need to do that to capture November data, December data, and then January. We're going to do that survey the first week of February, February 1st or something like that. And that will tie that. We just wanted to warn everybody to kind of give them a heads up because when State Jobs 2 comes out, and then they also get a survey that says, hey, how about our old way? It's going to maybe cause some confusion with a hiring manager out there. So just be aware. We're just trying to build a baseline of how we're doing, our quality of recruitment, but we need to use the same questions that we're going to use moving forward with the State Jobs 2 site. So that's our update. We're gradually getting over, trying to find the mouse. To see if anybody has any questions, if they want to text those in. You can also text in compliments, accolades. I'm responding to all the really technical ones just by typing, so yeah. I don't think that we're going to see a whole lot. So if you have any questions, find Lo Rudd. He's a very smart guy. He knows everything. So talk to him. Talk to Kay. She's good with the system. So anyway, just find us if you have any questions or concerns about this. We will be posting this webinar on our webpage so that you can go back and watch it daily if you'd like. With that, we'll wish you a great day.